Thank you. I had this whole talk planned, but I think now I'm just going to repeat Theo's because I thought that was pretty cool. Now, a little over a week ago, I was talking to my boss. I produce videos here for the college relations office, and he looks at me and he's like, "Hey, you're giving a TED Talk, right? How's that going?" It's become like the dreaded question. And my answer was something obviously, totally less than convincing along the lines of the fact that I hadn't even started yet. And the guy just stares at me and he's like, "Well, it's in like a week, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he stares at me again and kind of laughs to himself and goes, "Well, Winslow, you look remarkably calm for someone who has no idea what they're doing." I can tell you that I'm not anymore. This is almost as nerve-wracking as getting called on in French class. No, don't laugh. That's actually a fear of mine. In the spring of 2012, I studied abroad in South Africa. And I did a program through the School for International Training, which I'm sure some of you have heard of. And the last month, we had to ourselves to complete our own research project. Sometime in late March, the proposals for this project were due. And in typical fashion, the day before, I just had no idea what I was doing. But I knew I wanted to make a film. And I knew I wanted it to be about soccer. So, given my amazing research instinct and high level of schooling here at Connecticut College, I opened up Google, and I typed in homeless street soccer in South Africa. Amazingly, what came up was this link to an organization called Oasis. Oasis works in the townships of the Cape Flats, which are the poorest areas outside of Cape Town. Areas that are still hugely disadvantaged due to apartheid's lasting legacy, that have extreme levels of poverty, of drug use, and crime. What Oasis does is they offer soccer clinics for the youth throughout these communities. And through the game, they teach life skills. So lessons of character development, teaching kids to stay in school or off drugs or out of gangs. Oasis recognizes that soccer is the best way to reach these kids. And so they use the sport to teach these lessons. The contact information for the director of the organization, a man named Cliffy Martinez, was right on the homepage. So I emailed him that day, and he literally got back to me within hours, and he was so excited to hear about my project. I'll admit that I was nervous at first, because I wasn't sure what my story was or where exactly I would find it. But a few days after talking to Cliffy, I crammed my rented camera gear into my hiking backpack. I hopped on a train in Cape Town, and I rode out to the Cape Flats, totally unsure of what I would find. Within minutes of arriving at Oasis, I met this man named Lucanio Mjoka. He goes by Lukes. Lukes is 26 years old. He's short, with a shaved head and a round face. He smiles constantly, and he literally charms everyone that he meets. Lukes was born in the township of Kailicha. Kailicha is easily the poorest, most impoverished township in the Cape Flats. There are hundreds of thousands of people crammed into shacks. In many places, it's unsanitary and unsafe. Lukes was raised by his grandmother, who ran a local shebeen, which is a bar, and at the age of 6, he was drinking alcohol with customers. At 7, he ran away from home, and he lived on the streets or in and out of children's shelters for most of his life. At the age of 24, Lukes was arrested for selling meth. And only by some miracle of divine intervention, as he puts it, was he let off without jail time. But it was the moment he realized that he was wasting his potential. At the age of 25, Lukes came to Oasis, but he was addicted and he was strung out. What Lukes had, though, was skill. This guy can play soccer. And he tried out for the South African Homeless World Cup team that was sponsored and run by Oasis. He made the team. He was named captain. He was forced to face his meth addiction, and he got to go to Brazil to compete in the Homeless World Cup. He describes being named captain of this team as the moment that changed his life. When Lukes came back from Brazil, he decided to return to Oasis, and he became a counselor for their many programs. When I arrived, he had been at Oasis for 2 years. He was totally clean, and he was just revered by everyone in the organization. That day that I got to Oasis, Luke's took me into the townships to watch one of his clinics. The first thing I noticed as I watched Luke's teach was his passion. He totally believed what he did, and he knew that his story, it mattered. That through sharing his story, he could help these kids. When Luke's talked to the kids in the township, kids who were addicted to drugs or who had dropped out of school, or who were involved in gangs, he was able to ask them why, and he understood their answers. He was also able to challenge them because they knew he had made the best of a similar situation. Literally everyone I met wanted to talk to me about Luke's. In the simplest way, he was an inspiration, and he taught the kids in these townships to strive to become leaders in their communities, and they listened. This experience in South Africa, meeting Luke's, hearing his story, and working with Oasis made me realize that filmmaking and storytelling was something that I wanted to pursue and something that was worthwhile pursuing. And it started simply as a feeling. That's important to remember because for a long time, I struggled to articulate the idea of why I felt storytelling was so worthwhile. It was just something that I felt. And in many ways, this feeling didn't really need to be defined. I connected with Luke's and his story, both as an athlete and as a young man who's had every privilege that he did not. His story made me understand him on a level that no facts or data could translate. It allowed me to care, maybe one of the hardest feelings to describe, and maybe one that's even harder to generate. And that's the power of a story. It brings meaning through the human experience. And that feeling is what a story allows us to experience. Because whether it's articulated or understood, stories invoke emotion in a way that can change someone's outlook. And in just that sense, that unconscious understanding is where they hold their importance. There it is. It wasn't until very recently, actually, that I really realized or could fully explain why I felt storytelling was so worthwhile, so interesting and powerful as this agent for change. And this realization actually happened the other day in my professor's office. This semester, I'm making a documentary about two young local lobstermen who are just starting off in the business. It's an industry that is so hard to break into. And it's one that so many people tell me is dying or unsustainable. Yet these guys, they think that they can make it. They dropped out of college. They invested everything they have in this business, but this business is far from a sure thing. And with a bit of bad luck, they could be easily wiped out. I've been spending hours with these guys, filming them on their boat or down at the docks. But I've been really struggling to find anything that would bring this story past just like a glorified fishing montage, which could be cool. But the other day I was showing all this footage to my professor, and he stopped me and said, "Okay, after watching all this, what is the question that you are left with? What is it that you want to know?" And I had no idea. Which made me feel like a total idiot. I was just sitting there like stuttering and awkward, but he finally was nice enough to lead me towards the answer. And that was why. Why are these guys starting off in an industry that everyone says is dying? Why did they drop everything to return to this gritty, hard job with no guarantees for their future? Why are they so confident they'll succeed? Are they just naive, or are they totally brilliant? That question of why is what makes a good story. And that's where a story truly holds its weight, because it allows you to go beyond this manifest level. It allows you to comprehend the underlying emotions of any situation. It puts the human experience at the center of an issue, enabling you to connect, to understand, and to grasp why something matters and why you should care. In the case of Luke's, he generated an emotional response from everyone that he met. Most significantly, though, the kids in the townships looked up to Luke's because they saw him as a source of inspiration because his story in so many ways represented theirs. A lot of these kids, they just wanted someone to look up to or something to believe in. And Luke's and his story, it gave them that hope. But what mainly was so inspirational about Luke's was his passion. It shone through him, and it made his story relevant and accessible. Luke's absolutely loved what he did, and for that, he was loved. That is not a revolutionary idea or situation, because all of you have something you are passionate about, or something you love. All of you have the ability to be inspired, or to inspire. All of you have stories. But it seems that the most common roadblock to any sort of social movement or change is the fact that people feel they are too small to make a difference. I can tell you that Luke's is making a difference. And he once could have easily been written off as another statistic in this ongoing cycle of poverty. I guess my point is that people want to find something to care about, or to be inspired by, or to fight for. And with today's technology, in a globalized world with instant access to all of these amazing resources, it is not that hard to tell a story that matters and to have people listen. We have so many issues in the world, whether it be a warming climate, or a failing economy, or the fact that as a recent college graduate, I may never get hired. Sorry, that's been on my mind for a bit. If any of you want to come see me after, looking at you, Mom and Dad, looking at you. But we have the ability, and we have the technology. One voice these days can truly speak to many. So find your passion and share your story, because I am so confident, especially after participating in a conference like this, in the unbelievable power of human ingenuity to solve these issues. And someone, at some point, undoubtedly will do it. I guess my question is, why not you? Thank you.